Hi, it's Jez here from Nigezza.co.uk. Thank you for joining me today. So today I'm bringing you some crafty storage. So I loved this piece of DSP. It's beautiful. It's from that silhouette paper, which I've just been stroking and thinking, I don't know what to do with it. And so I've made my own crafty storage, and I'm using one of my favourite sets, which is this Follow Your Art set, which is perfect for crafty storage. And I'm using the lovely punch. So I'll be giving you some hints and tips for using this punch. And this piece of storage is to store all my strips of 1 inch, 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, and any little offcuts that you get when you make projects that fit that. And if I've made some tags and then I changed my mind, so I made that for a card, changed my mind, got it in here, so I know where to go for my strips. And then on this side I've got the other bits that I need to help me use it, my measurers for my stamperators and my window sheets that extend short pieces. So I've got 3 of them so that I can cut really small pieces as well. I've got in here, I managed to punch a really tiny bit as well, and that was using my window sheets. So I'll show you how I made this. So I'm using extra thick Whisper White, and it measures 11 inches by 8, and we're going to score on the long side at 1 inch on each side. So I could have said 10 inches, but I just find that easier. And then here on the short side, we're going to score at 1, at 3.5, at 4.5, and 7. And then we've got, for the inside tray, I've got a piece of this lovely DSP. I just love this. I'm going to love looking at this probably every day. So this is, it's 9 inches by 4.5, but I've taken like a 1/16 off it, just a smidge, so it fits inside the box. And so we're going to score on the short side at 1.25 inches from each end. And then I'm just simply going to fold it in half like so, and that's all there is to it. I'm gonna just fold and burnish these. So these are going to go up, that one's going to go up like that, and then that's going to form our little divider tray in the middle. Okay, so we're going to fold and burnish all these. So I've used extra thick so that it's I always call it extra thick, it's just thick, innit? You got thick Whisper White, you've got ordinary Whisper White. I always call it extra thick because it's that extra bit thicker than the normal. But yeah. So I'm using the thick to give it a bit more durability, because I shall be using this storage for a very long time, I hope. So there we are. So let's do some cutting. So I am cutting on the inside of the score line so that that's nice and neat. I actually want to go this way, but it doesn't matter. doesn't really matter, but you actually want to do these to give you the squares that way. It's no huge drama doing it that way. And then we're cutting, we're going to notch to get rid of those score lines. That was me not fully concentrating, but I say it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to cut that one that way, because it doesn't really matter if it goes that way or if it had gone the other way. It really makes not really any odds. So what you've got there is you've got the flap going in that way, so that the cut edge is on the side, and on this one the cut edge is on the front, so really doesn't really matter. Right, so I was notching when I find it easier to notch in that direction. She says they're not notching right. So it's just the little squares are being notched, rectangles stay intact. I keep turning the card because of the fact that I find it easier to cut in that direction. Just because I'm a bit odd like that. Do you know, I watch some people when they're making, and they do this bit really, really quickly. Right, I might, at this stage, put my mats on. So if you're going to put your mats on, you've got to decide which bit is going to be the bottom and which bit is going to be at the top. So I've got to decide which of these finishes I like best. And actually, I kind of like the one I went wrong on. So I might make that the top and that the bottom. So if this is the top, then I'm going to decorate all these sides. I'm not going to decorate the bottom. Okay, so for my decoration, I have cut some mats. So for the top, I have got this lovely DSP from the silhouette paper. Can't quite remember what it's all called. Love this sheet, so I thought I'm going to look at this for a long time. So this is 8 3/4 by 2 1/4, and this is 8 1/2 by 2. On the front here we have got 8 3/4 by 3/4, and then that one's 8 1/2 by 1/2, and we're going to put that there and that there, and then at the sides we've got 2 1/4 by 3/4, and then we've got 2 by 1/2. Now all these measurements will be on my blog, and I've got exactly the same as that again, which I'm going to stick on the inside. I just thought, let's go all out and stick that on the inside. So I'll stick all these down, but I'll speed you up so that you don't have to watch me do it. There we are. So that's all the bits stuck on. So now we need to put glue on all of these flaps to make it up. So this is the lid, so these two are going to get glued to there, and that's the bottom. So I might make the bottom up first. And so because I've matted with cardstock and put DSP on, that makes this really sturdy now. And I make a lot of my own storage, as you will know if you follow me, and I do want them to last, and all the storage that I've made has lasted and I still use, and I get far more pleasure out of looking at the storage that I've made, particularly where I've used sort of favourite pieces of DSP, because then I get to look at them every day, and they're made to my specifications and needs. And often when you buy things, it's like, oh, I wish that was like another centimetre. I wish I'd used fast fused. You know, you sometimes think, oh, it's like a centimetre short or a millimetre short, that's even worse. And whereas when I'm designing my own for a specific need, it is exactly the size that I want. And I've made this so it's 9 inches long, because I figured I'd be cutting my strips down from the shorter side of a piece of A4, and which is like 8 1/4 for us, 8 1/2 if you use American size paper. So it means it will fit in, and there'll be room to spare to get your fingers in. So so this would also make a really nice gift box if you were giving somebody something long. You could keep pens, pencils in there. So actually it'd be really nice storage for our watercolour pencils, wouldn't it? Just thought of that. They are sitting in a stamp box at the moment. Could make another one of these for that. So just hold that in place. And I'm going to test that out now. I thought of it. So, is it long enough? Yeah, it is. It would fit. Got to put a thumb hole in there. But you could put watercolour pencils. I'd maybe resize it a little bit, make it slightly smaller. But yeah, oodles of possibilities. Right, and then we just need a thumb hole. So I've got I meant to cut this before. It was like in my head as I was gluing it down, it was like, oh, I could cut the thumb hole before. So I'm just sort of eyeballing it. There we go. So that is perfect there. I'd just like to fold that back slightly so that it goes round. And then we're going to stick this in. So I'm going to put a bit of glue up that middle bit. Stick them together. Really don't need glue on both sides. It is just paper after all, but I say again, I want it to last. So stick that down there, and then I'm going to double check before I glue it that will go in there nicely. Yeah, it does. Doesn't that look lovely? Oh, I just love it. I'm just going to so enjoy having something pretty on my desk, just like all my other storage that I've got. I love looking at my die box, embossing folder box, the one here, my embellishments box. I just enjoy looking at those every day. Got my little utensil holder here that sits next to where I film every day. Here, it's got all my essential tools in. Just love it. Love it. And I've got my glue one that sits next to me here as well. And my Tombow goes in there. Just perfect. If you haven't seen those videos, check them out on my channel. I think I've made a playlist for craft storage, so easy to find. So that's that done. So here's my bit. I made a prototype, so here's my bits to go in. So there's me templates there, and there's all my strips already cut out there to fit in there, and some offcuts and some bits. So that's all in there quite nicely. So that's great to have them all in one place. So now I've got something stuck up there. What is sticking up there? Nothing. There we go. So I wanted to decorate this. One of my favourite sets that's retiring is It Starts With Art. I won't be getting rid. So I thought I'd do some stationery bits on the top. So I'm going to do the pens. I think I'm going to do these re-inkers and that. Might do a few buttons. I'm going to cut out some buttons, maybe the paper clip, and I'll cut the pens out. And I'm going to do Follow Your Art, and I'm going to use the punch with it, which was the whole point of making this, to put a nice little decoration on there. So I need some Whisper White cardstock to do me bit of stamping. So they're all mounted up, and I've got some Night of Navy. So I'm gonna stamp these elements. Love it. And then I'm going to got a little bit. I'm sure this is cut to 3/4. Yeah, I was just double checking I hadn't just picked up a random bit. So I'm going to put Follow Your Art in here. Hope it's straight. Yep. That'll be nice. Don't know if I want it a bit further away. I might do another one just in case I decide I want it longer, and put some buttons with it. So that gives me the chance of cutting it a bit longer, which I might do. Don't know yet. Sometimes I have the vision and then it's like, oh, I'm not sure. So I've got myself some options there. So I'm going to cut those out with the die cutter and come back to you. So those are all the bits cut out. So I did a whole row of buttons. Cut these out. Pens, the paper clip. Might use my pokey tool to get that out. So don't know if you can hear the cat making some noise out the back here. I live in a Victorian house, and so next door to us have still got their old outhouse, so it would have been their outdoor loo, and the cats sit on top of there, and so they're not at my eye level, they're actually quite a way down, but I can sort of see them, and they sometimes look up at me and thinking, what on earth is she doing? She stands there every day Well, that's not cut. So, well, we'll not bother with the paper clip then. I'm not doing it again. Because it was in the middle, it probably didn't have as much pressure. Yeah, and now it's yamming. I don't know what it's yamming about. Yeah, it's having a good old conversation. There's nobody to listen to it, well, apart from me. But at least it's not fighting with the other cat that comes round. Sometimes the noises they make are, well, they sound like babies crying sometimes. And sometimes they just sound like they're in a cartoon. They make like proper cartoon noises. But the other week, one of them had proper attacked this one. And I had to, it was actually in the outhouse, the privy. And I had to go and knock on next door and let her know. Left her a note in the end, she went in. But I wouldn't class myself as a cat lover, but I wouldn't see them any harm done. So, yeah, so my idea was that I would just have this sort of randomly on there. I might cut a few more buttons down and then have the follow your art. So I'm going to use my, that side looks straighter than that side, although I could stamp it again. So I'm going to use my punch. What am I like? So I'm just gonna, so I find with this punch, I did do a video the other day when I was talking about it, and it was actually this morning, but it would have been the other day, probably the day before you see this one. So I find it better if you actually make sure it's butted up against the end there, and you can see that those are even, and that gives you a really nice sort of cut. Now I probably want it, I was thinking actually, oh, I've done these all in white. I could have done some blue, like a navy buttons, to sort of give it a border. Right, so what I've done there is I have got from the end of that T to the end of that bit there is 3/4 of an inch. So I want to chop this down so that it's 3/4 of an inch from that tail of the T. But then you've got to allow for 1/8 of an inch that's going to get cut off. So we'll go to 7/8 of an inch. So that will make it cutting there. So that'll be 3.5. So I'm going to cut this down to 3.5. And then stick that in, and then it should be even at both ends. So you've got the same distance there as you've got there, which is probably a bit big. So I'm gonna take it down until I'm happy. There's a bit of me thinking that is quite little, that actually I could triple mat that. So I might do that. I'm going to cut this down, so I'm taking off where that shoulders were, and I want to make it 1/2 inch. Really difficult to do 1/2 inch on that one, but not so difficult on this one. So it is 3/4, so I need to take I want to take it down to 1/2 inch, but I want to take a little bit off each side, so I want to take 1/8 off each side. So we'll go 1/8 over the 1/2 inch. That's a scoring tool, Jess. And we'll go that could go up to the 1/2 inch now. There we go. And then I can mat it in blue and then mat it again in white, and that should hopefully come out. So I'm going to stick that up there. Like so. So that's that bit. Now I'm going to measure this to know how big I want my blue one to be. So that measures 2.5. So I want a strip of blue. We want to go 1/4 inch to allow for the cutting off, and then I want to go another 1/4 inch to allow for the 1/4 inch mat, and I'm going to take it another 1/8 to allow for the fact that the next one's a different shape. So I'm going to cut 3 1/8. So I want a 3/4 inch strip of Night of Navy. This is 1 inch. That is 3 1/8. So I'm going to cut that down to 3 1/8. I had cut them already at 1 inch. And then I'm going to cut that to 3/4. That moved. Oh dear. 3 1/8. 3/4. I do sometimes use washi tape. That'll do. And then I'm going to cut this one . I didn't cut that 3/4. Don't know what I cut it at, but I didn't actually cut it at 3/4. So I'm going to cut this one, this fancy one. And so if I've measured correctly, that will fit inside there nicely. Do it that way around. And then I'm going to cut a white to go around it again so it will pop. So I need 1 inch wide piece of white. Is that inch? I think that's 3/4. So I need 1 inch piece that will be inside here. Because I cut them up ready. Put the inches at the bottom. I just cut up a whole sheet of Whisper White to do this. Right, so all I'm doing again is I'm going to measure this. So that has now come down to 2 7/8. So we need to add 1/4 inch for the 2/8 that are going to come off each side, and then 1/4 inch because that's how big I want it to be from the end. So that'll be 3 3/8. So I'm going to cut to 3 3/8. And then I'm going to do it in the flat end. I don't need my extra arm because it's not going to disappear, but I do have my window sheet arms if I should need them. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I ran out of room on my phone, so I was merrily sticking these together. So all you missed was I had just chopped these two, and then as you can see with those measurements that I did, that they layer really nice. So it is a matter of remembering that. Just run this over so that the ends are all bowed down. So it is a matter of remembering of adding, every time you chop 1/8 of an inch off. So your thing needs to be 1/4 of an inch longer than what you actually want the finished one to be. And if you're thinking about the layers, you want 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch on each side. So you have to make it 1/2 an inch longer than the one below to make it matte. That's what I've found. Okay, so I will probably do an entire video just on explaining the easiest ways that I've found of using it. Other people might find other ways, but that is what I've found works really well. So just stick that down, and I think I'm gonna stick this up on some dimensionals. Oh, 3 came at once there, a bit like buses. And so this will be, often like when you're cutting up paper, you end up with 1/2 inch, 1/4 of an inch, 1 inch sort of mats, and so it's nice to have somewhere to put them when they'll be ready then for using. And then so that's where all my scraps are, and then on this side these are my window sheet extenders. Where's my 1/2 inch one? Oh, it's there. So I've got these 3, and they allow me to stick a bit of card. So I put a little bit of snail on there, stick it on the end there, and then that allows me to have a little extender. And obviously that one's too thick, so you'd put it on the one that matched. And then you've got, I cut this wrong, didn't I? So, and then you've got an extender arm for it. Works really well. Use window sheet because so that the sticky will you know, you can pull it off, whereas if you used card you'd have to just like keep cutting a piece of card, and that's a little bit more sturdy. And then I've got these for use with my Stamparatus. So I've got my Stamparatus set up with some bits of chipboard, and so that I can, so if I wanted to do a 1/2 inch one, I'll just move that up to the 1/2 inch space, and that's just allowing to find the right place then to put the stamp. And I put my strip in there, and I say likewise I then extend it to the other sizes. So that is just what I have done to make this a sort of an easier thing to use. And now I've got something pretty for on my desk with all my bits. Loving it. So yeah, favourite punch at the moment. So and I love that paper. So all the details will be over at nigezza.co.uk. Hope you found that useful, and again you could use this as a nice gift box as well, but I just don't like it being useful. Okay, see you again soon. Please stay safe, please like and subscribe, please share, please help me get to 3,000, well, and beyond. But I've got I like round numbers, they're always something to celebrate, aren't they? Okay, see you again soon. Bye.